So tonight we're going to talk about Wi-Fi and the different types of wireless that's out there. And we'll end with what's called WIMAX. WIMAX is a newer type of Wi-Fi for whole cities and regions to get onto the internet without actually having any type of modem in your home. You can actually do it with a WIMAX type of setup. It's available for entire cities. So we'll talk about that. So there's such things as called a wireless spectrum. FCC, by the way, oversees all this. Anything that has to do with the over the air, FCC is managing that. So if you have like a drone, example, you might have saw this in the news. Even consumers have little drones that they fly around. Had to register with the FCC, and I think you had to pay $5, and then they gave you the $5 right back. I don't know what the purpose of that was, but anyway, I had to do it for a couple ones I have. And so anything over the air they want to know, which I understand, definitely, I get it, because you can do a lot of things now with drones you couldn't do a couple of years back. You can hold, machinery, ammunition, guns, whatever. They can do a lot of stuff now. So, but the wireless spectrum is kind of like I knew a guy's one of my friends is an air traffic controller, and one of the most stressful jobs I've been at, next to dentistry, I guess. That's what I like. I think dentistry might be the most, and then air traffic controllers too. I don't know why dentistry is, but anyway, that's what they say. But the way air traffic controllers work, you have different levels of airplanes flying over the airport at any moment, right? And they have to control where they're at, all the planes, and they tell them what the pattern is and what the altitude is, and when they can land. And sometimes they might be managing 40, 50 planes at a time, 80 planes at a time, whatever, all just circling above the airport. Much more dangerous than dealing with Wi-Fi, but it's more visual, giving you a visual of airplanes in the air, how they have to travel in a certain level so they won't hit each other and won't collide. Wireless does the same thing, but it falls upon what's called megahertz to determine that level of flowing in the air, basically. The different megahertz a Wi-Fi is, the different level in the air it's flowing to where it doesn't collide. And so it spans anywhere from 9 kilohertz to 300 gigahertz is what the range of electromagnetic waves for Wi-Fi is. And it's controlled again by FCC. If you look on the back of your modem, your Wi-Fi access point at home, you'll see an FCC sticker on there. They have to know what hertz it's running upon, what the frequencies are, and all that good stuff. The ITU is the other one. This one oversees international. So if you like 3Com or Intel sells modems are going to be over that and overseas. The ITU will be over that. And so here's the spectrum as far as the range of wireless spectrum. Again, the left is a very low end, 9 kilohertz. This will be radio navigation, marine, aeronautic. Then you have AM radio. Then you've got shortwave radio, FM, television, L-band, cellular, wireless LANs, K-band, wireless MANs, and then other type of satellites. Characteristics of wireless transmissions, regardless of what they are, they will fall into layer 3 of the OSI model. And the signal origination is from some type of electrical current, wave, or dish traveling along some type of conductor. Generally, the conductor is going to be electrical. So even though it's in the air, there's still electrical signals right now in this room traveling that we can't see. That's definitely traveling all over, everywhere we go. Also, differences from wired is the fact that because it's has no physical wire, no physical point-to-point, it's the transmission is going to be different, the signal transmission. More scattered, also more acceptable to noise, and more susceptible to degradation. Like, for instance, if you run You know, you've had this happen in your house, maybe you're at work, a microwave, a garage door open can affect your Wi-Fi, okay? Even a remote control game that you play can affect it as well. Antennas. Most of your access points today have built-in antennas you don't see, but they are in there. And it also, depending on the antenna, also depends on the transmission and reception of the people around it or the connections around it. You can be on the same frequency required for each antenna and can share the same channel, because Wi-Fi has different channels it can fall upon. Generally, it's going to be channel 1 through channel 11 or channel 12. So here's an example of two Wi-Fi devices, and notice that they're both connected to wired units for internet and network connectivity, and they are transmitting data continually all the time, and signals are being sent out to the device and sent to the device, both. They have what's called a radiation pattern, the antennas do. That's a three-dimensional area around the antenna that all electromagnetic energy sends it. So basically take an antenna, draw a circle around it, and whatever the power of the antenna will determine the width of that power from that antenna on how long the signal goes. And that's determined by what's called MTU, which we'll talk about in a little bit. The MTU power of your unit depends upon the strength of your signal from your unit to wherever, in your house or in your building, from that access point. And some of the more commercial models of access points can really pinpoint a length of strength of that data to where I can say, okay, from the outside of this door, I want no signal. I can literally control the power to where it will not go beyond that door if I wanted to. Out of the box, most people don't mess with that at home. You leave it at what it generally is, which is usually like a 4 or 5, which gives you roughly about a 50 feet, 60 feet range. You can make it lower, which would make it a smaller range, or even higher, which is supposed to give it a longer range. Most of your documentations, like in Linksys and things, when you start playing with it, it gives you a little pop-up that says, oh, by the way, this could degrade your signal speeds, which it definitely could. Because in order to get a longer strength, a longer length, you have to degrade signal because of that. So generally for home users, you're okay leaving it like it is. Then you got what's called omnidirectional antenna. This issues and receives signals equal strength, clarity from all directions all the time. And then range is another term for antennas, which is reachable geographical area is the range of an antenna. Basically all it's saying is what's the circumference from the antenna, both in feet, of how long that signal can reach. Line of sight, a company here in town called, or regionally called T6, does line of sight technology, meaning they have a dish pointed to a farmhouse or to a building or to another home or something, and then that home or that farmhouse has a dish as well that's pointed to their dish, line of sight, for internet connectivity. And it's good for rural areas and people that can't get cable, works great. Obstacles, because of line of sight, you're going to have weather can be an obstacle, farm animals can be an obstacle, birds can be an obstacle, you name it can be an obstacle, anything comes in between that. For the most part, what I just mentioned is not going to hurt it much as far as animals, but vehicles, the engines within vehicles can cause issues with that signal as well. So they can either do one of three things when it comes to obstacles: pass through them, okay, absorb them, and then subject signal to three phenomena: reflection, meaning bouncing off, like on a maybe a reflective type of object, like a farming machinery, like a combine that could hit a signal, could bounce off and go back to and reflect. Diffraction would split it into multiple waves. Scattering could diffuse it in multiple different directions. And then you've got what's called multi-path signals, where the wireless signals follow different paths of the destination that could be on purpose caused by reflection, diffraction, and scattering. The advantage of this is it's a better chance of reaching its destination. Disadvantage, signal delay and degradation on signal, multi-path signals. So here's an example, and you have this in your home, by the way, everything we've already talked about. I know I mentioned the farm, but even in your home this is going on. So you have in your house some plants, you got a dresser, you've got a wall, you've got a table, a chair, computer. All these things are going to do different things to your signals. Even though you don't physically see it, it's happening. So like a plant, if it's around a plant, it could scatter it from the leaves. If it's around a wall, it could go up over the wall. If you ever drop ceiling, bounce off and come back on the other side of the wall. If you have a computer, it could be reflected back down off to the computer in another room that has a Wi-Fi type of connection. And so diffraction, hitting the table, the flat table, and bouncing off in all different directions. So the signals are constantly going throughout your house. It just depends upon the makeup of your house and what's in it, what it's going to do with that signal. So a lot of people think, well, it's going to go out directly, and regardless of what's there, it's just going to keep, like, you know, billowing out in a uniform fashion. That's not what happens. It just kind of bounces around everywhere. And so depending on your room makeup, like if you're in a room that has a whole bunch of metal studs or steel studs or steel machinery, it'll affect the signal. You're not going to be able to get signal in that room. You might go in a laundry room and you're like, signal stinks. Washer and dryer, they're on all the time. Might have a, I don't know, water heater, air unit. All that stuff's going to affect the signal. And so a lot of it's going to, in those areas, it's going to degrade as far as the signal strength. Degradation of signal can happen when there's change in signal strength, like electromagnetic energy from anything in your house. Microwave, garage door opener, remote control, audio, surround sound. Attenuation, that has to do with what's called signal weakening, moving away from the transmission antenna too far. So instead of 50, 60 feet, you're at 100 feet, and you have like hardly any signal whatsoever. And then correcting signal attenuation, you can install like repeaters. Like Belkin's got repeaters that you can install in your house fairly cheap, like $30, and they'll just repeat your signal. Noise, a significant problem because there's no conduit for wireless. There's no wires running around it to protect it. And so because of that, noise, and I'm not talking about physical noise, noise from electrical wires, noise from lights, noise from fluorescent lights, regular lights, trying to think, in a business, computers noise, machinery noise, automatic door opening noise, time clock, a whole bunch of different things could cause problems. Speakers in the ceiling could cause issues. So frequency ranges, and you've seen these, maybe your house unit, and if you've looked at it on the bottom, maybe, it usually will have one of these two. It's going to fall in the 2.4 gigahertz range or the 5 gigahertz band. The 5 gigahertz band is usually new. It's newer, and it's for like if you have a set top at home, like a Roku or a newer TV that has built-in technology to connect to Wi-Fi devices. It's going to be 5. It's going to be 5 gigahertz for sure. And the 2.4 is older. It's still around though. A lot of, if you have an access point that's 3 or 4 years old, it might be falling upon this. And it's just very susceptible to interference. 11 channels. No FCC requirement for this one. The 5 gigahertz has multiple bands. They've got a 5.1, 5.3, 5.4, 5.8. So if you have surround sound at home that's wired or wireless, if you have a newer TV within the last couple of years, a newer wireless access point in the last couple of years, you're probably falling upon the 5.4 gigahertz channels. They have 24 unlicensed bands on this one. Each has a 20 megahertz width used by weather, military, radar communications as well. So your weather radios fall on this one. They can get weather when power's out, and because it uses satellite technology a lot of times for that. Fixed versus mobile. Fixed communication wireless, where you have a transmitter receiver, locations do not move. The transmitting antenna focuses energy directly on the receiving antenna, like a point-to-point. Advantage, no wasted energy, and more energy is used for the signal itself. Mobile is where the receiver is located anywhere within the receiver's range, and the receiver can roam. Your phone will be considered mobile, where you can turn on your hotspot anywhere, or if you have a mobile Wi-Fi device, that would be another one. Point-to-point, or even your transmitter at home would be considered a fixed wireless because it doesn't move generally. You keep it in one location. In this building, we have multiple fixed locations of access points, which would be considered fixed. Ad hoc WLAN, you can create this on your laptop, your desktop, if it has Wi-Fi built into it, your mobile phone, create ad hoc. And what it is basically, on a pinch, you can create an ad hoc connection to share your internet, to share data, to move data, and maybe you've done that before. But most all your mobile devices, both Droid, iOS, and Windows, will let you do this. And even all your Windows, Mac, and Linux laptops will let you do this with a wireless NIC card and share that information easily. It's not real good performance. It's not like, if you've used it before, it's good enough to search the web a little bit and transfer some files, but you're not going to be streaming movies with it. It's not good enough. Now, I will say if you're doing like one of the new, I know AT&T has one, I think Verizon does too. Those are pretty good, but they're designed just for sharing internet. That's all they're designed for. And that's not really an ad hoc. That's actually like a mobile access point. You can move anywhere, but cellular. So you're getting the speeds of cellular, which depending on your provider, can a lot of times exceed your home connection speeds, many times, depending on where you're at. And so most of you have the bottom one at home and at work, the access point that basically accepts wireless signals from multiple nodes, retransmit it to your network. You have base stations, wireless routers, and gateways. Now your home router is basically all three at the bottom. It's a base station, it's a router, and it's a wireless gateway. Okay, it sets up DHCP for your network to work and to cast out IP addresses, people connect. It's a router, it's smart, and it has rules in it that you can block traffic. You can, by default, it'll block traffic for you, like pings of death and somebody trying to find out your IP address. It'll block all that easily. Now the older ones wouldn't, but all the newer ones do that out of the box. So here we have an architecture of say an ad hoc. You have your phone, you're at, I don't know, some convention, and the Wi-Fi stinks in the convention, which they generally do. But you gotta get on your laptop to do something, and so you fire up your phone, turn on hotspot to connect, right, to check your email and whatever it is you need to do during break. And it's good for stuff like that. Perfect, right? Not something you're going to use every day, 24 hours a day. It's just for a pinch, going in and doing it. Generally, it's going to be usually in today's culture, instead of laptop or desktop, it's going to be your phone connected to a tablet, or your phone connected to maybe a laptop, possibly. The infrastructure of WLAN, this is where the stations communicate with an access point, not directly to each other. And the access points require power and strategic placement. Here on campus, we have in all of our buildings, we have anywhere from 10 to 12 access points to propagate our RVC SSID, our RVC guest SSID, our employee SSID, our AirPlay SSID, which also runs Chromecast, and I think another one that's out now for streaming or mirroring images from a tablet to the overhead. We have that now throughout all the campus locations. WLAN, though, may also include several access points, like I just mentioned, anywhere from 10 to 100 stations per access point. And these access points I'm talking about are managing access points, like Cisco has managing access points that manages multiple other smaller access points and controls them. So on this example here, you've got a switch router connected to the outside world to your access point. Your access point propagates your network and IP address and internet to all your devices through one SSID generally. Okay? And it's going to find connection, security, all through that SSID. Mobile networking through the architecture of Wi-Fi is where you can roam your wireless nodes throughout the network, and anywhere from the location of the Wi-Fi device, maximum is 300 feet. And these are basically going to be, even your home devices now will go 150, 200 feet, some of them even 300 feet, depending on the manufacturer, it'll tell you that. But it ranges upon the manufacturer and the device that you have. It can connect two separate LANs in a WLAN. So like you could have two separate LANs, and in between a wireless LAN is connecting the two. I've seen that before. An example would be a lot of schools do that when they have a lot of mobile trailers or mobile setups for different teaching environments. They'll have wireless LAN connect those networks on the campus. Saves on cost because you don't have to run Cat5 or fiber. You can just do it through Wi-Fi. No support for the same protocols on multiple operating systems. So whether you have a Mac, a Linux, doesn't really matter. Android, it's all going to work the same. So here's an example of two access points connecting two networks together. And like I mentioned earlier, a lot of elementary schools do this because a lot of them have these learning trailers, which I've helped set up. And the trailers are connected to the main building with access points on both sides. Right? A lot easier, a lot cheaper for the schools. Maybe your home does this as well. You might have two multi-level home, and some of you might have two access points that connect the different floors together. Depending on, if you have a larger home, it could do that for sure. 802.11. This is the standard for wireless technology that we still use today. 802.11 was developed by the IEEE, and the standard is still out today. Only thing that changes in the standard of the 802.11 is the last letter after the 11. Started out with A, then went to B, then G, then N, and we're now going into another region as well with high N going into another letters we'll be using. But basically, it shares characteristics on Wi-Fi in things like duplexing, how things are accessed, how data is formatted. It's all the same, regardless of the different types. Now, the different letters, we'll see a chart here in a second, speed, but really you're talking about over time, the Wi-Fi has gotten more secure and faster over time. So 802.11, initially what it uses is a MAC service of a 48-bit number from the actual NIC card, the Wi-Fi NIC card or the access point. It's the same as a physical NIC card that we've used in here, basically, where your NIC card's had on a little piece of stamp the actual MAC address. Your Wi-Fi cards have the same. They have MAC addresses it uses. And wireless devices have to fall on the same physical addressing as wired. Wired devices, same as wireless. And wireless devices aren't designed for simultaneously transmitting and receiving data. They can't quickly detect collisions, and they can use different access methods. So because of that, wireless isn't as wireless is not as what's the word? It's not as more common than wired today, but the data is not as sure getting there as it is in the wired world still. There's still some issues with wireless that I'm sure you've seen in the workplace and at your home where signal drops, data strength drops, and so the reliability is the word I was looking for. It's not as reliable as wired, right? It's getting there, but not there yet. Now the word SSID stands for Service Set Identifier. It's what you named, whatever you named your access point at home when you unboxed your access point. Either you bought yourself or you got through Xfinity. It had you rename your SSID to my home, get away from here, don't connect to me, whatever it is you're calling it. Okay, and some other colorful ones I've seen. And so that unique character string is what is used to beacon out to other devices that you're there. And all devices are constantly looking for that beaconing. They're constantly looking for that beacon all the time. And unless you set your computer or your laptop or desktop or mobile device not to do it, it'll actually try to connect to those beaconings if you're not connected to Wi-Fi already. It'll try to connect to the most strongest one around it at the time. And so that's where hackers will take that advantage. And a lot of times, we do this in my 130 class, hackers will create the same SSID that's in that location, like say at a Starbucks or wherever. It's generally done in a place like that. So if Starbucks, you have an SSID called, I don't know, Starbucks.
The biggest one's AT&T.
AT&T is the biggest SSID in Starbucks, I believe. You're right. So they created one called AT&T in the Starbucks environment. And instead of, well, let's say it's in a back room somewhere, that access point, and I'm out in the middle of the environment, since mine's closer, people that have been in there before, their computers and laptops and tablets already know that SSID. Well, if I'm closer, as soon as they come in, a lot of times, and say I'm unsecure, say my connection's unsecure, my SSID is, a lot of times it'll try to connect to that first. And most people, believe it or not, won't look and see, is it secure, not secure. They just know it connects every time they go in. They connect to it, and now they're connected to a hacker's machine, and all their information and data is going through that hacker's machine through like a man-in-the-middle attack. We actually do a lab in my 130 to where the students come in, sit down like you guys are, have them go to facebook.com, put in a bogus username and password, stop the attack and say, come over to my computer over here, and then they see all the username and passwords they just entered in. And so when I turn the attack off and they go back to facebook.com, it's the real facebook.com, but while it's on, it's a phished web page that I created that looks like facebook.com, but it's actually being ported from my computer over here. And that's how man-in-the-middles are run, through SSIDs and local hotspots. And so I say that to say this, and I tell the students when we do that little lab, is, the best of us it could happen to, you're busy, you're not watching, whatever. But all of us can remember when you're on public Wi-Fi or free Wi-Fi, never try to do any financial or secure transactions in those connections. Because of that, that's how hackers get all your information. They can't get your information. So BSS is it's called Basic Service Set. This is an association type besides SSID. It's where station groups shares an access point. And BSSID is not as common as SSID, and it's usually used more for commercial grade devices where salespeople are on the floor and they have these devices to scan product and maybe, I'm thinking, take your credit card information and do a point of sale on a mobile device, would use that type of connection. ESS is extended service set. This is an access point group connected to the same LAN. It allows you to roam and move around without losing connectivity. And then several access point detected, meaning selecting the strongest signal, the lowest error rate, and this one poses the most risk of security. And this is one I just mentioned earlier of the rogue access point in a Starbucks called AT&T to glom onto your computer to get information. So a network with a single BSS looks something like this. You'll note that BSS is being propagated, beaconing continually all the time, and the computers are catching that BSS. Multiple BSSs within a network looks like this. Next is the 802.11g. This was out about, 7-8 years ago. It's an older Wi-Fi technology. Has speeds of 54 megabits per second, 20 to 25 megabits effective download speeds and upload speeds, about 100-meter range, 2.4 gigahertz channel, and they were compatible with other 802.11 networks, .11b networks. And came out in 2009, is still out today. Primary goal is for higher throughput, speeds, which is speeds, and higher level of security, for sure. And you got like WPA2, WPA2 Enterprise, WPA2 Personal, WPA2 Enterprise TKIP. Maximum throughput, 600 megabits per second. It's up into the gig range now. This is an older text. And it's close to Ethernet speeds, wired Ethernet speeds for sure. Now, if you set your home Wi-Fi up to true N speeds with no degradation or interference, it runs within 200 to 300 megabits per second from Ethernet, roughly, if you're close enough to the device. It doesn't always happen because you have maybe more than one device connected to it, like your laptop, your TV, 2 or 3 other people. And once you add all that in, you just divide it by whatever your throughput is, that's what you get on top of whatever signal degradation you're getting at the time. It is backward compatible, like all of these have been up to when they came out. They were backward compatible with other 802.11 technologies. They fall today on the 5 gigahertz. They did come out with a 2.4 gigahertz originally, but now it's 5. And same exact networking standards as 802.11g, but much faster and more secure. They also came out with it on the end. These are actually hard to find, but they came out with these for a while, where it had 3 antennas on the device. It did increase your throughput because it increased the length of your signal and the power of your signal as well. Most of your access points today don't even have these on. You can't find them anymore. This was like 3 years ago, 2.5, 3 years ago. You can still get them, but you're not going to go to Best Buy or anywhere like that and find them. All those places are going to have the antennas in the unit. You're not going to see them outside anymore. But the maximum throughput, again, 5 gigahertz today runs about 200 to 300 megabits per second shy of a gig on your N, true N, if you have a newer N device. It is backward compatible. The problem with backward compatible or mixed mode is throughput speeds are going to drop. So you have older devices in your house, like on G or B even. If you do mixed mode on your access point, it's going to degrade the speeds of everything. But if you do true N, it'll be much faster, but you have to have all your devices be able to connect to that. And that doesn't always happen. Bluetooth. Bluetooth, how do you guys use your Bluetooth on your phone or any device? How do you use Bluetooth? Anybody use Bluetooth?
Yeah, headphones.
Headphones. Anybody else?
Stereos,
What is it?
wireless stereo.
A wireless stereo. Anybody else? Hotspot, Bluetooth hotspot. Anybody else? Somebody say car? Use your phone connected to your Bluetooth car? Okay, cool. So audio, connectivity in vehicles. So a lot of uses for Bluetooth today still. It requires very little power, covers real short distances, like less than 30 feet usually. And the aim of Bluetooth was basically to bring in some type of standard for connectivity to be more personal and be more secure, but without any passwords. And the security came because of the range around it, which is only 30 feet. The downside is there are some definitely security ramifications, because if you have Bluetooth on your phone all the time, especially on Android devices, you can do what's called blue snarfing, to where you can get these apps to search for Bluetooth devices, specifically Droid devices, and try to push data to them or pull data from them. If you ever, and most people do have their Bluetooth on all the time, even though they don't use it all the time. And so if you're in a crowd, you won't even know possibly that your phone's contacts are being looked at, or generally that's easily accessed through Bluetooth. Other types of data is a little bit more difficult, but pushing stuff to those devices, if Bluetooth's turned on, is a little bit more difficult than it used to be. I think the operating system for Droid's got much better. But if you have a Droid device that you have taken and rooted, it's definitely susceptible for Bluetooth snarfing, and could happen. But Bluetooth is definitely a network type where you can share data, you can network, you can share internet connection. All your computers, laptops definitely have this built into it, where you can share your internet via Bluetooth. You can share it to your phone via Bluetooth. The speeds, not real quick. They're not like super duper fast, but they get the job done for what you need it to do, especially for music. It uses a lot for that. Connecting to your car for phone calls, I'm guessing, and controlling navigation, things of that nature can be done. There are two different versions. The first was version 1.1, then 2004 2.0, then they recently had one around almost 4, version 4. But still the meters is about the same, about 30 meters, 30 feet roughly, 30, 40 feet is still the range, and that's for security. But you have cell phones, headphone sets, personal computers, cars now use it as well, vehicles now use it. And it's similar to WLAN standards, except for the meters of connection, and definitely the speed is going to be much lower in Bluetooth. Bluetooth really it's a good technology to control something else, right? So if I want to control something, Bluetooth is an awesome technology to do that. That's why you see Bluetooth a lot of times on phones, to control audio devices, or to control car devices, or control some type of other small home device. So implementation of WLAN, you got designing it from within a home small office to access points throughout businesses. And I'm going to forward fast here to some slides I want to get to for time. A lot of this stuff has to do with home, which you guys are familiar with as far as home networks, working in your home network. Okay, so this screen here is a basic Netgear type of smart wizard. You've seen this maybe if you've set up a Netgear or a Linksys type of access point at home. It has your configurations of IP address. Are you going to get your internet from ISP, like from Xfinity, whatever. On the left side, it has setups for things like blocking sites, scheduling, email, router status, wireless settings. Do you want to do port forwarding? Do you want to set up a DMZ port, a dynamic DNS to serve your own website? So these screens here just go through some of the, screens you might have seen at some of your wizards at home when you went through, all the way through even setting up your local LAN to set out an IP address and to set a DHCP server up. This one here's giving IP addresses within the place from .2 to .51, so 50 devices can be connected in this environment. A little note for you at home, whatever you have at home normally connected, add like 5 to it, and that's all you need. Because 5 will be like guests you have in the future, generally. Most people, though, just keep it at 50. Okay? It's not like it's going to hurt anything to keep it at 50 because, unless they have your password or hack your password, it's not going to matter. But I always tell people if they're concerned about it, whatever you have in your home, number-wise, add 5 or 10 to it, and you're good. This goes on setup screen for router. Configuring wireless clients aren't a big deal anymore because all your operating systems now, Windows, Mac, Linux, all have built-in, if they have wireless devices, already have built-in auto configurations for your Wi-Fi devices. There are some commands. IWconfig will be command line on the Linux side to determine IP address. You might have seen this in your Windows environment. This one here is using Windows to configure my Wi-Fi wireless network. Connecting maybe an ad hoc connection here. That's what a Linux command prompt looks like, by the way. Notice when you do IWconfig, it says, okay, no wireless extensions are connected, no wired extensions are connected. But then the third one is, or no wireless connection on the second one. Third one is a wired connection, which is connected here on this one, or wireless ETH1 802.11g is connected, not wireless, not wired, but wireless. And it gives on here the access point MAC address, speeds, power, and strength of signal. So some pitfalls on access points. SSID mismatch. Make sure, unless you're trying to go in and do a man-in-the-middle attack, which I know you're not going to do, make sure your SSID is different from those in your environment, okay? Make sure your encryption is the best it can be for that area. And the reason I say that is some devices won't, depending on the age of the device, it might work with N, but it might not work with the highest encryption N has, possibly. So you might have to lower your encryption for everybody to connect. Incorrect channel. I've seen this, to where in a business and home both, where sound systems, speaker systems, whatever, fall upon a certain Wi-Fi channel that conflicts with your access point. And you can change that in the access point. You can change that actually in the configuration screens to a different channel. So say if it's on, 6 right now, you can change it to 11 and see how that works. Incorrect antenna placement or access point placement. Make sure it's in a direct location, central location for all your devices. If not, it could have degradation of signal, or some devices maybe not even be connected at all. And any type of electromagnetic interference. Make sure it's away from microwaves. Don't put it right next to your microwave. Don't put it right next to your garage. Don't put it right next to any machinery in your house or engines or any contraptions that have any motor, because any motor is going to create electromagnetic energy to cause friction and distraction with that Wi-Fi. Wireless broadband is the latest technology where you basically have high velocity Wi-Fi. And I want to get to the WIMAX. Okay, anybody heard of this before? Heard of I know you have. I've talked to you about WIMAX. Anybody heard of WIMAX before? Okay, WIMAX, Clear Communications, some other ones around. I know there's a number of them. Clear Folder is folding, but there's other ones I'm guessing that will be coming in the future. It stands for Worldwide Interoperability for Microwave Access. It's 802.16, began in 2005. Falls upon the 2 and 66 gigahertz range. licensed, non-licensed frequency, line of sight, paths, throughput potential are good. Non-line of sight paths, kind of like your cellular connection now, where you could just basically be within a region where an antenna is and be able to connect. Two distinct advantages over Wi-Fi: much greater throughput, about 70 megahertz up to 100 megabits per second. I've seen even higher, 250 megabits per second now. Range on Wi-Fi Max 30 miles up to 50 miles, depending on where you're at. I know a friend of mine's a missionary in Alaska. They have WIMAX. Theirs goes like 50, 60 miles from the central location, but it's out in the middle of nowhere. There's literally no distractions or of that signal. It's appropriate for MANs or WANs, highest throughput over short distances. Possible uses: alternative to DSL and broadband. Well suited for rural Alaska. Well suited for that. Internet access to mobile computerized devices, residential homes as well. So you've got your tower, much like cellular, but instead of cellular, it's these panels, or these, they look like about this tall and about this wide. They're rectangular in shape, and they're just all over towers. And they still have them around the Chicago area in Schaumburg, these right here. We have some actually in the Mulford location here. If you keep driving down Mulford and keep going and going and going till you get to Perryville, there's a tower, whole bunch of towers out there, and you'll see these on those towers. And the home user, though, does have to have some specialized device to connect to that service, okay? Once it's connected to that service, then they can, just like you have now with Xfinity, connect to your, in-house access point and do everything you do now. This is actually for home devices. They do have, though, clients for mobile, clients for desktops, clients for laptops as well that you can install for WIMAX. Here's what the residential looks like, a couple of them on a pole or top of the building, top of your house, whatever. So metropolitan area, home connection, connectivity, it could replace Xfinity type connections that can't get it in those areas. MANs would be extensive connectivity. Download speeds much faster than home broadband a lot of times. Drawback, it's expensive. It's expensive to set up and to use. You have to have a lot of buy-in in the area. And but I think it's definitely a technology. It's not going anywhere. I think it's just going to take some time to shoot off in some areas. Satellites, the other last one we're going to look at. Satellite. What's the satellite providers? What we got here in this area? Dish. Who else? Who else we got? Dish, and who else? What's the other one? DirecTV and Dish, right? Both of those. I know Dish does. No, I take it back. I know DirecTV does still advertise internet service through DirecTV. I don't think Dish does. I think they're actually connected now to AT&T, if I'm not mistaken. I might be wrong on that, though. But again, whenever I was in a rural area here in Rockford, when we first moved here, we had DirecTV. I think at that time, internet connection was like $90 a month or something if we wanted. We didn't get it. About $90 a month to get. It's still pretty expensive. I don't know how expensive it is or how widespread it is, or if it's I'm guessing, if I was to guess, it's going down in popularity because of Comcast and Xfinity and things of that nature, buying up markets and things. But it can be used to deliver digital television, radio signals, voice and video, cellular, and providing home and business with internet connectivity. And they're satellites that orbit amongst the Earth's surface to propagate, connect to users that buy the service. Around 100 miles to 1,240 miles above, not a position above the equator, because that would mess up the electromagnetic stuff. But it basically orbits the Earth continually. These satellites do. And there are some still in use, definitely for military that use them all the time. NASA, But I think it's coming down. I don't think it's as popular as what it used to be years ago for internet connection. And that's kind of what it looks like there. So you've got your satellite uplink and downlinks connected to for internet connection, connectivity. So